I'm going to bring you my first fantasy football foreshadowed frontrunner of 2023, and that is Jahan Dotson, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders. A little bit of background: Jacob and I did a draft last night, which I predicted about 40% of Jacob's picks. I'm just good like that. And notice I gave myself a low success rate. But Jahan Dotson was a guy that was sitting there, and I just thought, Jacob talks up a lot of guys, especially when we talk shop with fantasy football all the time. It happens. So I know, I hear it in his ears. I hear it, he talks about a lot of players. And I start to take notice of those players because I trust Jacob's opinion. But when Jahan Dotson was on the board last night, coming up into the draft, and I kind of look at Jacob and I'm like, you know what I'm doing here. Like, And he's like, yeah, I know what you're doing. And it's weird because a lot of people were shouting collusion, but it's not. It's just we literally have we are telepathically commuting with one another. So he knew that I was going to take Jahan Dotson, and I said, "Hey, you want him? I'll let him slide a little bit." And Jacob's like, "Oh no, thank you, no thank you." And I'm just like, "Come on, man." But I will say, to your point, Jacob, Jahan Dotson goes against everything in my fantasy football. If I was to write a fantasy football manifesto, the number one rule would be do not draft wide receivers who play with questionable or lackluster or therefore whatever. You know what I'm trying to say? Unproven QB play. And this year he enters the 2023 season with Sam Howell. It's a big question mark. What is he going to be able to do? But what didn't he do last year? You can make the same argument that you made with Garrett Wilson in that he had not the best quarterback play with him, and he was still able to do so much with it. In just 11 games last year, he posted 6 top 25 finishes, including 2 number 1 finishes on the year. 11 games. TDs, they're very hard to predict, and I understand that. But you have to imagine if the guy can play 6 more games, 7 TDs should be easy to come by. We saw what he's able to do in the preseason. Looks like he's sustaining that high touchdown rate. Let's keep it going into 2023. He looked great this preseason, and I've heard this in a few places, and I just can't stop thinking about it. The Antonio Brown comp. Prime time Antonio Brown, similar stature, similar speed, similar hands. Now, he's not there yet, but it's all there. It's all there. I could see, and I think there's so many scenarios that benefit Jahan Dotson. One, he's not going to stretch the field like Terry McLaurin. He is taking over for Terry McLaurin in 2023. He will be the Commander's number 1 option at the wide receiver position. That's just my bold take, hot take. A lot of people agree, so I guess it's not too hot. He's currently my wide receiver 26, which seems kind of weird considering, he gets lost in this shadow of what was 2 years ago. He was the 16th pick in the NFL draft. Like, that's a first round pick, and some people write him off. I got him yesterday at the end of the 7th round. Like, I don't know, man. I might be way too biased here. The sky's the limit for this guy. He's currently my wide receiver 26 in front of guys like Terry McLaurin, his teammate Tyler Lockett, who I do think will finally see some regression because Tyler Lockett is that player that you never draft inside the top 20, and then he always kind of finishes in or around the top 20. I'm also drafting him in front of guys like Mike Williams and Michael Pittman Jr., and just behind other newcomers like Christian Watson and Drake London. Again, the sky's the limit for this guy. You heard it here first, maybe second. I'm not that original. Dotson, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders, man. He's my front runner. I can easily see him in a top 15 finish, which is going to well outperform his ADP. That's Jacob.
Yeah, so look, I don't have anything against Jahan Dotson. Like, he
just don't like the man. Say it.
No, so this happens. I think everybody has these guys that most of the fantasy community loves, and just for some reason you're out. And it's not that you completely dislike the player. The thing is, you're out on the ADP. You're out on where they're being taken. Of course, I would love to have Jahan Dotson on my team, but where most people take him, I'm looking at a lot of other players. And I'm usually reaching for my guys, not reaching like 6 rounds ahead, but I'm usually reaching a round or 2 ahead for guys that I'm very passionate about. So then if it's a guy that I'm not too passionate about, then I kind of just let the people who are higher on him take him. And that's just Jahan Dotson for me. Like, I've been like that I was like that for Deontay Johnson for years. He was performing every year, and I just, for one reason or another, he just wasn't for me. And I was based on his ADP, I wasn't taking him. So this reminds me of that. And they're not similar players necessarily. I'm just saying that's the similar vibes, feelings that I felt for that player. And so Jahan Dotson is an incredible talent. And I remember I think it was game 1 last year. He started this season with 2 touchdowns. And I think he's going to be really good in this league. It's just a guy where his ADP is a little too high for me. But I mean, not mentioning how many leagues I play in, but with all the leagues I play in, I don't have him in one league.
And so heartbreaking.
Kind of scares me. I should get some real estate there.
When he pops off, I have him in a plethora of leagues. I will be happy to share the love with you, Jacob, my comrade in fantasy football advocacy. You mentioned some of the guys going around him. Do you remember the pick that you took before, or I guess you took him right after Jahan Dotson? Do you remember? I was pulling it up last night, but what I see on AFC average draft position is a little bit different than how our redraft league shook out last night. So I just wanted to clarify. I'm pulling up.
Yeah, I got to take a look at that.
Oh, you literally took Michael Pittman Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So totally.
But okay, so
those are
I needed
solid.
wide receivers really bad at that point in the draft.
That's fair.
I mean,
and if you
but
look
you took
at
Jahan Dotson before or after that pick, those picks.
I took him after those picks. So you took 2 wide receivers and you missed up on Dotson.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest,
but Michael Pittman is a number 1. I still have Dotson above him.
A smarter fantasy analyst, someone who does not get their emotions involved and have rookie fever, would have taken Jahan Dotson over Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm swinging for the fences with Jackson Smith and Jigba because my wide receiver depth, I only had CeeDee Lamb at that point in the draft. That's it. So I had to take a huge swing with JSN, but I should have taken Jahan Dotson. Smarter fantasy player would have taken Jahan Dotson instead.
I mean, according to AFC, you took him 20 spots early. But, dude, every draft is literally so different. So I only use this for the basis of mostly.
Well, for me, it's like, okay, where did we draft Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave last year? They were probably drafted way lower than they performed. And so that's what I'm thinking with Jackson Smith and Jigba.
I was looking specifically because I thought you were the guy that took. Well, here, let's just play it so we can close this argument or disagreement or conversation for that matter. Jahan Dotson or James White, or not James White, Jahan Dotson or Rachaad White, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And let's just say your draft shakes out where you get a guy like you have like Hill.
You could just say you have an even team, like
you have an even team, sure.
And this is going to be your flex play.
Sure. Sure. Jahan Dotson.
I'm going to go, and this is full PPR.
Yeah, baby.
I'm a big Rachaad White guy.
Yeah.
Only
Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, I would go Rachaad White.
Let's see. Jonathan Taylor, according to AFC, has fallen. I don't know where he went last night in our draft. I'd have to take a look back. But it was definitely past the 3rd or 4th round. He's in about the 6th round here. I take Jahan Dotson. I take his teammate. I take Jahan Dotson over Terry McLaurin. George Pickens is going in front of him. I think I took George Pickens literally like a round later.
A round before. I take Pickens.
Yeah.
I think I still take McLaurin, to be honest.
You mean Dotson?
Oh, no, McLaurin over Dotson.
Oh, get out of here, boy. You know what? I just can't discuss it anymore. Let us know down in the comments what you think about Jahan Dotson, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders. He is my fantasy football foreshadowed front runner for the 2023 season. You better believe it.